All right, good morning, Dr. Ugochukwu. It's a pleasure to have you once in today's meeting again. You have been a vital instrument for the peace of the nation and the globe. And today we are going to look at an exciting and excitable topic. Uh, we'll be looking at cleaner energy for better life in Africa. You can see. Oh, good day, Mr. Ugochukwu. It's a pleasure to see you once again. It's a privilege that I will be anchoring this program today. And to our viewers there, it's a pleasure to see you, to be part of the program. And today, Ambassador Tawli Joshua will be anchoring the program since Janet has other engagement. Your usual and anchor, she has other engagement today. So I am privileged to be hosting and be anchoring this program today. So we are glad to welcome you once again in today's Peace Clinic. And we will be looking at a very interesting topic, a very inciting and excitable topic, talking about cleaner energies for better life in Africa. And the Peace Clinic is brought to you by the Institute of Global Peace and Conflict Management. The Institute of Global Peace and Conflict Management is a global professional body. And one of our mandate as an institute is to carry out public awareness, all right, public education. And this is what we are doing through the Peace Clinic. The Peace Clinic is an initiative of the president of the institute to educate the populace, all right? So he will be sharing interesting time with us. Dr. Gochuku, you are welcome on today's.
Okay. Good morning.
Dr. Gochuku, can you hear me?
I can hear you clear. I can hear you clear. I can hear you clear.
All right, it's like your network and the background where you are.
Okay, pushing down. I can hear you clear. I can hear you.
It's like you adjust your position. It's like you adjust your position because your network where you are now is not quite good. Or you may try to use another network. Let's see. Otherwise, that one is not good. And it's like I'm hearing noise from your background. It's like the more you are close to the roadside or so. I can hear noise.
Okay, let me adjust in 2 minutes.
But can you hear me now? Can you just speak? Let me hear if your network is clear.
Can you hear me clear, sir? Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. I can hear you.
Okay. 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 Is it fair now?
It's fair. It's fair. I can hear you now clearly. All right. So thank you very much for joining us in today's episode of the Peace Clinic. So I would like to have you introduce yourself briefly before we continue on the program. To our viewers, you are welcome. Thank you for creating time to join us once again. We're part of the program and discussion. You can send us your question, you can send us your contribution, and we will read them at the appropriate time. Thank you very much for being there for us. Mr. Ugochukwu, you can introduce yourself briefly before we progress.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I am Ambassador Dr. Ugochukwu Anunobi, the youth leader of the Institute of Global Peace and Conflict Management, River State Chapter. By the grace of God, I had my first degree in electrical electronics engineering from the prestigious university, Federal University of Technology, Owerri, and I had my second degree in occupational health and safety management from the South American University, and by the grace of God, a doctoral fellow of this great institute. I work with the Abia State Sports Council as the team manager for cricket and also the Umunnochi local government team secretary. So by the grace of God, it's a pleasure being here today. Thank you very much. Can you get me? Let's talk about today. What's happening? Let's talk about Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, sir.
Okay. So it's a pleasure having me on the show. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Although I did not hear about the introduction, my network was bad, but I believe you have introduced yourself, and I believe that the audience must have heard you. So thank you very much. Once again, it's a pleasure. So today we'll be looking at a very interesting topic. We'll be talking about cleaner energy for, better life in Africa, because we have been talking about the issue of climate change, and we want to make a shift from the fossil fuel consumption to a kind of renewable energies that can make lives better in Africa and even the globe. Now, Dr. Gochu, you are a professional in technology, and we have to feature you to speak to people, to also enlighten the people how possible this is and how beneficial it's going to be. And when we talk about cleaner energy, what are we talking about? So you have the idea, you have the knowledge, and I believe that you are here to share with the general public so that they will know what they stand to benefit, what are the consequences of not embracing this, and how it can better the lives of people in Africa. And if at all, can it be affordable for people to access it? That is just it. So you are here, and I give you the platform to share what you have with the audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Greener energy is a big opportunity for Africa. By the word greener energy, we talk about energies, sources of energies, consumable energies, distributable energies or transitional energies that do not transmit carbon to the ecosystem. First and foremost, we must understand what an ecosystem is. An ecosystem is a space where living things, of course, and also non-living things inhabit. Where anything lives, an ecosystem. And the ecosystem comprises of various factors and entities competing for survival. And one of the challenges of the world globally is the climate change, and especially the impact of carbon to the environment, which depletes the environment. One of the topics which we were supposed to research on this institute was the impact of environmental impact on security and that. And we see that climate change has a impact on this. So greener energy are energies that do not emit carbon, or what we may call poisons in common words, to the environment. Greener energies are these energies that could be used to generate electricity, that could be used to generate irrigation, that could substitute what we call fuel, for example, petrol, that could be used to substitute crude oils, that could be used to substitute bush burning, that could be used to substitute other processes of energy generation and emission that poisons the environment. Now we look at the pollutions that vehicles contribute to the society, the carbon emissions from engines, from diesel engines, from petrol engines, and other kinds of engines that are powered, that are fueled. You know, when we use the word energy, we're talking about fuels. Okay, we're talking about those fuels or components that gives engines or that gives life the ability to do work. So these are what we are looking at. So examples of these carbon emitting substances could be your fuel, your petroleum, your petrol, your gas cookers, your kerosene cookers, you know, and fire burning. For example, we see in Africa where people substitute the process of bush clearing for burning, and we see carbon being emitted to the atmosphere, which thus depletes the ozone layer. So we are now looking at how this also impacts climate change. Now, when the ozone layer is depleted, by depleted we mean being affected or being injured, that layer was supposed to protect Earth from the ultraviolet rays that comes from the sun. That is the heat, the harsh heat that comes from the sun. The ozone layer is supposed to reduce its impact on I and you, on our environment, on everything that associates us. But the more it is depleted, we now discover that the rays of sun, or what we call heat, that comes into our environment as Earth becomes too harsh. Number one, it quickens the rate of evaporation from the Earth or from the land or from our waters. When evaporation rate is faster, the volume of waters come down, and because of the misbehavior, we can begin to see that these waters begin to act strangely. Automatically in the water cycle, what we call the water cycle, because of the rate of evaporation, when the waters are coming out, the vapor is coming from the Earth, of course the temperature gets hotter. And people begin to wonder, why are we beginning to experience so much heat? The hot evaporations coming from the Earth and the ultraviolet rays coming from above affects our health. Some people, the kind of creams they use being reacted by the harsh heat from the sun makes them, react cancerously. So we see that the ozone layer, when depleted, impacts the behavior of the climate. And when the climate is beginning to behave abnormally, that is what we call climate change. From when rains are supposed to come, when the Harmattan season in African settings is supposed to come, to a season where even in December the rains are coming because of the rate of condensation of vapor in the air, in the atmosphere. Of course, it's not supposed to be like that, but because the system has been altered through carbon emission especially, we now become impacted in all sectors, and that is what we call climate change. So green energy are energies that can foster our devices, power our houses, power our engines without emitting these poisonous chemicals, without emitting these things we call carbon components or the phosphoric components. For example, we have a situation where in Port Harcourt, for example, we have what we call acid rains as a result of gas flaring. People there's a language we use for them. We call them bunkering in our own area. Okay, where we have these elements that conduct bunkering in our environment. They burn crude on their own standard, not on a professional standard. And I will give you a little picture on how this is serious so that we can, when we talk about environmental impacts, all of us take it serious. People design some kind of cookers, fabricate them, bring this crude, put them in it and burn them, just like you burn charcoal. This is exactly what people do. And all these toxic carbons in unprofessional or unstandardized rates gets emitted into the environment. And in the night, you see people choked. Some people sleep, and by the time they wake up in the morning, you will discover that the whole place will be filled with black particles. Even your vehicles will be washed in the night, will be clothed with black particles. And this is what I and you are breathing in the night. And this impacts the fertility of human beings. For example, so many men in those areas complain of not being, not being able to carry out their conjugal functions, simply because the system is depleted, the system is affected. We have high rates of cancers as a result of all this. We have skin reactions as a result of all this. A season comes where everybody is coughing. I mean, everybody, the miracle workers are coughing. Everybody in the street is coughing. And people are asking, what's the reason for this? These are impacts of toxic carbon emissions to the sky. So we are looking at a system where we can reduce the volume of carbon emission to our environment in order to have a safer environment, in order to have an environment where longevity will be longer, where the health of people will be safer, you know, and where people could also benefit from society and get some economic profits. So green energy is the answer for Africa. Green energy is the answer for the globe. China understood this and adopted these processes. And as at 2015, China began the production. Of course, China is the biggest producers of what we call the solar PVs, that is the solar panels and the solar systems. China bought into this idea, and by research, the Chinese company says the local Chinese did not buy into the ideology initially, but foreigners, the Britons, the European nations were buying into the ideology. But gradually today, China has become the most, the most investors and users of this alternative energy called solar system. Now, this solar system works in a very, unique way that it receives energy, solar energy. When we talk about solar energy, we talk about sun energy. We're now beginning to talk about sources of greener energy. Number one is the solar system, the solar energy. So this energy comes from the sun. The word solar means sun. Lunar means the moon. So the sun, by nature, God designed Earth that the sun and nature has this way of distributing energies across all sectors. The ocean, the rivers, the wind, the fire, the sun, all these are sources of energy. Now, man thought about a system where he could tap from this unique energy and convert this energy to electricity or to other forms. Remember that we have a theory in physics that says that energy can never be destroyed, but can be converted from one form to another. So if truly energy can be converted from one form to the other, that means that wave energies could be converted to another form of energy, which could be electrical energy, chemical energy, mechanical energy, thermal energy. So electrical energy, for example, as we know, the generation of electricity, on your bulbs, cooking through electricity, watching or using your devices through electricity. The mechanical has to do with those fabrications of metals and all those. So it is possible that energy can be converted. So the Chinese and some specialists came into the creation of what we call the solar panel, which of course has the ability to receive this photo energy from the sun and store them in a system that transforms them, converts them to electricity. This is a breakthrough for the whole world globally. It's a breakthrough for all of us, and we must tap into this. Now, it is such that energies are generated, electricity is generated without smoke. For those of us who will be asking, what is carbon? Carbon are gases, poisonous gases that, of course, the characteristics is that they can choke you. The characteristics that they are colorful, maybe bluish, brownish, okay, and all that. All those things you see coming out of engines, all those smokes you see coming out from whatever is burnt, have carbon elements. Okay, so that's what we're talking about, emission of carbons. Now, when this solar converts sun energy to electricity, there is zero carbon, there is no smoke. Number two, there is no noise. Number three, it is just, I mean, it's calm and very, very efficient. Okay, so this is one thing the solar system can do and did for China. Now, I will talk a little about it, then go into other forms of greener energies. Now, in China, the Chinese government did something through the solar energy in Beijing. We saw companies that had to liaise with families, liaise with communities to use the roof of their houses to install these solar energies, solar panels, then make money out of it. And at the end of the day, they pay everybody that install those panels on their houses. So people are making money. So people can make money through solar energy. For example, in Nigeria, where we have poor we have poor access to electric power, people burn generators trying to charge phones for other people. The solar could be an alternative for both charging and for domestic use. So the solar energy, I assure you, of course, by research, have zero emission of carbon and is safe. Therefore, it is a very recommended type of alternative energy. Secondly, we look at the wind mill as another source of greener energy. The windmill are, for example, structured like giant fans that is, rotated by the wave of wind, and when it rotates, it converts the energy supplied by the wind to electricity. This can be used for irrigation pumps. This can be used for domestic use and also for industrial uses. Now we see this Africa having a geography that is very suitable for this, but for so many reasons, this is not utilized. In Jos we have locations that are airy. In Abia State, we have locations that are airy. Everywhere in Nigeria and in Africa, especially, Africa is blessed with heat. Africa is blessed with wind. Africa is blessed with the water. Africa is blessed all around. So we could begin to tap into these sources of knowledge. So the windmill is a very big platform that we are yet to take advantage of. It does not emit any carbon. All we need is the winds to be there, and automatically there is energy. Now, we also have something that is being researched on, which we call the artificial photosynthesis. Now, this is the research the West is carrying out on also systems to reduce carbon emission. In fact, a lot of researches are going on in laboratories today that are yet to come out, because the challenge of life has been discovered to be our environment. So our environment has a lot of impact on how we live. So artificial photosynthesis was a system adopted because God in creation did something very marvelous. The plants out there on their own receives energy from the sun, and when the energy is received by the leaves or the stem or wherever, it breaks down sugar and water. It synthesizes the system and gives it its food. And at the end of the day, it gives oxygen outside to the environment out there. And people say, okay, if naturally the sun can impact the tree or the grass out there, and it burns down carbon inside of it, it burns down oxygen inside of it, okay? And at the end of the day, it releases oxygen. That means there is something wonderful about this, a natural way of generating energy and emitting oxygen out there. So what do we need to do? These guys came together, designed mechanical technologies that could receive this sun energy and introduce them to what we call carbon dioxide, and at the end of the day, it generates oxygen. So we now see that oxygen could be generated through another system that is not natural, but acts as natural. So a lot of guys out there and also in Africa are doing a lot of researches in order to ensure that we reduce carbon emission out there. We've talked about the solar system, we've talked about the windmill, we've talked about the artificial photosynthesis. There are other means of also generating this. There are batteries, what we call batteries, systems that store charges, inverters, although dependent on electricity, independent on the solar system. But the issue is that these cells have the capacity of storing charge and emitting it when needed. So somebody in America can store charges in inverters, can store charges in batteries, and come down to Africa or to Europe or to Asia and use those stored charges for a long period of time without exposing environment to danger. So everything that can help us, okay, live our lives, utilize energies without poisoning our environment is recommendable, and also plays a role in the greener energy we are talking about. So this is it. And in the world today, we have discovered that the more urbanized or the more developed nations of the world contribute more to the depletion of the ozone system due to what we call industrialization. So a lot of nations, even in China, that is the foremost in the solar system, still burn coal, still use coal to generate energy. Now, one of the mayors said the reason why they must continue to use that as alternative is that, one, we cannot quit coal to switch into a system that has not been globally, that has not had a widespread. So there is what we call alternative sources of energy. When this fails, you switch into this. When that fails, you switch into the other one. So when solar fails, they switch into coal. When coal fails, you switch into other sources of energy, as not to shut down the economy at a stage. Now, this is their own philosophy, but the Norwegians are working hard to ensure that by 2030, there is nothing like carbon exposed to their cycle. And one of the mayors in Norway said that they want to be the first nation. In Oslo, they want to be the first city to be carbon free. It's a goal. So all this is all about vision. All this is all about our drive. What do we want to achieve? Before I came online, I was discussing with a friend, and he laughed and he said, will those people selling generator agree alternative sources of energy to exist in Nigeria? And we laughed about it. So these are the political impacts that impacts all of us. Our advice to everybody is that whether you are in South Africa, whether you are in Australia, whether you are in Liberia, whether you are in Nigeria, the impact of the environment affects all of us. No matter where nobody can hide from this. The air-conditioned house also have this way of being impacted by a polluted environment out there. So it is possible to have a greener energy out there while phasing off what we call carbon emitting systems. The nuclear energy can also be a source of greener energy. It's a system where nucleus or protons are put together, electrons are put together to generate energy, and without carbon emission to society. Yes, there could be hazards, but very minimal, and Africa is one of the lowest contributors to the ozone layer impact when it comes to carbon emission, because the rate of industrialization is low. On the map, which we shall be sharing over time, would make available this material to everyone to study, we discovered that the European nations, America, and of course China is lead in the pollution of environment on carbon emission due to the systems of production and the rates of production through carbon emitting turbines, through vehicles and all those. But something is also happening. We talked about the artificial intelligence, the robotics, and the conversion of vehicles from fuel models to electric models. Of course, it is noted that over 20 million electric vehicles have been sold already globally. So nations are adopting electric model of vehicles to convert people from wherever to wherever, electric trains, solar powered aeroplanes, solar powered ships, and even solar powered submarine, machines everywhere. So there is a drive, and African nations must adopt, African leaders must adopt this vision to make Africa green. Making Africa green means eradicating the emission of carbon to our environment, because it impacts us negatively. When you come to the southern Nigeria, we can tell the story. You cannot breathe good air. People can no more drink water because the waters there are acidic. You go to a land that used to be fertile, and when you travel on the roadsides, you see that the grasses are greenish, oil spillages, acid rains coming down. The people cannot drink water from the rain. The people cannot drink water from the rivers. So the people are run into poverty. So we see that this carbon emission can also expose our environment to abject poverty. It can deplete our longevity. It can affect us in every sector. Of course, when the environment is impacted, people will pick arms. People will agitate. People will begin to behave abnormally. And at the end of the day, we discover that there will be crisis, there will be wars, there will be disagreements. We have one of the matters in Nigeria when a particular group of people from the Ogoni kingdom or from the Ijaw kingdom rose up to say there were a movement or whatever movement agitating for the cleansing of Ogoni land, for the cleansing of the South. It did not go well. We saw deaths of notable people. We saw deaths of personalities who, if we're alive today, I think their contribution to Nigeria would have been better. But these are impacts of, these are factors or visible factors that environmental impacts would bring. So we subscribe that our leaders take this as a goal. The Norwegian mayor said it's our vision to ensure that our transport systems are green, to ensure that our houses are green, to ensure that the environment is free from carbon emission. So how do they do this? There is one of the buildings which is also I think an institute, but we'll not be mentioning their names because they are not paying us and we can't advertise them for free. So it's called the Powerhouse. This is a house that was structured from up to down and was sealed with solar panels from the top to the walls to the windows, and all these were interconnected to a system that generates light to the over 10-story skyscraper. And at the end of the day, vehicles come to the same to the same building to charge, to receive charge. So when these electric energies are received, it powers the houses and also can be sold to electric powered vehicles, can be sold, or like what we do in Nigeria where we commercialize it, we could also recharge the systems of people, we could recharge the phones of people, and they pay for it. So there are economic values that this can also bring to the system. So this is what they did in the Powerhouse. Vehicles come there to recharge and go their way, and they pay for it. Like we said in China, they are what we call solar farms, solar plants, farms. Now, over the sea, over forests, over mountains, they install these solar panels in hundreds, in thousands, which generates over 30,000 megawatts, and it is regulated to distribute according to the want of the people. So greener energy is possible. Greener energy is for everybody. And if Africa buys into this, I tell you, we will be a better place the world will want to visit. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Yes, Doc, thank you very much for that wonderful insight and the revelations concerning the greener energy. It's quite excitable and insightful to listen to what you are saying here. And I believe that those that have joined us are also listening. And it's very unfortunate that many of us are not in the position to do anything concerning taking a step to implement some of the ideas and policies and plans that we are talking about. But and Doc, let me ask concerning the Paris Agreement on climate change. All right, because I think this is part of the thing that we are discussing here. The leaders are making efforts, governments are making efforts, institutions are making efforts to make sure that we have make a shift from the fossil fuel we have been consuming to the renewable energy that we are talking about here now. So the question is, how is African states, including Nigeria, what efforts are they making to adopt the Paris Agreement and start implementing what is stated in those agreements? I know that it's a collaborative effort. Do you understand? I know that the technologies must be transferred, and knowledge must also be transferred. So what efforts Nigeria and other African countries are making to make sure that this agreement is being implemented and is replicated in our nationalities?
Okay. Like we already said that it's a collaboration of all sectors, and I can assure that the African nations and the leadership of Nigeria has opened these windows to a better energy system. Because if we look back in the last 10 years, when you say solar systems, we knew solar systems to just be calculator powered solar. That was what the limitations we thought solar energy could do. Where our fathers got us calculators and said, when you take it outside, it burns. But today it's no more like that. Today, the windows of Nigeria, the windows of Africa has been opened in Namibia. A lot of solar plants are installed to ensure that Namibia is carbon free. A lot of African nations are subscribing into this. We know that in the northern Africa, that a lot of nations have geared into nuclear plant installation, and we know that in Nigeria also we have the Institute for Nuclear Research and Development, and all this is geared towards creating alternative energy. So these institutions and institutes are carrying out serious researches, and Africa, of course, has always been a core case study for the development of technology in these trying times. So our government is doing its best. There are shipments of these gadgets, and of course, there are a lot of private sectors who have dived into this. Like we said, we may not be mentioning their names, but today, the migration of the solar especially has increased in our nation, and also is increasing and enhancing our economy. The government has opened these windows.
All right, Doc, thank you very much for that wonderful response. Well, let's look at the reality on ground. Majority, but before we go for the reality on ground, let me ask you this question now. How affordable is this renewable energy sources that we are talking about? Are they affordable? Can the average people be able to access it? What about the common people, the people that are poor in our rural areas? How can they afford and access this energy we are talking about here in Africa, most especially?
Okay, that is where the challenge comes in. But recently, there are systems that the private sector is adopting in the distribution of these gadgets. For example, in River State, where I come from, there are companies that market these products to people. In fact, they want to distribute it to people. And all they want is have an agreement with us how you can pay this installmentally until you finish. You want to pay in 3 months, you want to pay in 6 months, you want to pay for 1 year. And it's as low as some people paying 3,000 a month, some people paying 2,800 a month, some people paying 7,000 a month, according to the facility they want to pick. So it's a goal, and I think it is vision driven in to ensure that the grassroots, to ensure that the farmer out there, to ensure that the driver out there, to ensure that the businessman out there has access to it. So it is no more a system where you must pay cash to receive solar panels of 2.5 million. It's no more a system. Somebody shared an experience with me. He said he plays a bet company, and the company had to supply them solar systems as alternative for generators, so as to foster the job 24 hours and also enhance income. So all they do is pay gradually, pay installmentally until they clear it. So it's another system that has been introduced to ensure that these gadgets are spread in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc. Now let's look at the reality on ground. In Africa, majority of the people are poor. That is fine. And the majority of them are not educated. Some of them don't know what we're talking about here. You understand? Most especially those uneducated people. Now, and they are the ones also contributing to this as well. Some of them, even to maintain their vehicles, they don't maintain. You carry vehicle, you enter road, you see smoke flying here and there. And then some of them are depending on wood for cooking. That is fossil fuel in place. Do you understand? What they are using is firewood for their cooking activities. If you go to our locality, that's what they use. Do you understand? And these things are also contributing to the, what we're talking about, global warming and some of those things. So how can we get these people to buy into the idea of renewable energies? And this is where the challenge actually is, Doc, because I'm looking at how possible can these people connect with what we are talking about here. And are they even aware of what we are talking about here? Is the message of renewable energy climate change? Do they even understand what climate change is all about? So how can we get these people to understand this thing and buy into it? How much opportunities are available for them to come in? Yes, go ahead and respond.
That's another dimension of this, because I think we've done a lot of academic work on renewable energies, but the issue is even in the academic sector, not everybody that is academic is on this path. So it is something that is exposed to the environmentalists, engineers, like you have rightly pointed out. But I strongly have been impacted by this institute, the Institute of Global Peace and Conflict Management, and its part to fostering both peace and mitigating crisis in society. I think since I joined this institute, my perspective in life changed. My discussion outside there with people changed. In fact, I have gained topics to discuss naturally with human beings around me. So I think that we must adopt the model and ideology of this institute as a discourse in our environments everywhere. Because psychologically or sociologically, any topic any person generates has a tendency of being transferred as discussion outside there. So if we can take it to the grassroots, because government cannot do everything, we are a platform that can also integrate with the whatever ministries involved in this, and we partner with them. What we are doing today, of course, the whole world is watching, the whole world is listening, they are getting impacted, and they have a message to send out to the grassroots. So we can teach this thing in churches, we can teach this thing in community groups. There are communities that still have meetings every Saturday or once in a while. Women groups negotiate with them for meetings and address them on the need to preserve our environment. So I think that it is time for us to take this thing from the books, take these things from the laboratories, take these informations from the counters of private sectors or power sectors that distributing power sectors to the grassroots, to educating them on the need to be carbon free and live longer and have a safer environment. So I think it's a drive we're going to go into, talking to our people through churches and every other grassroots channels to ensure that this information reaches the grassroots. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Doc. Let's look at other impacts, a kind of relative impact concerning this issue of fossil fuel consumption. All right, like there are local people that we have talked about, for instance, now. You know, they are constantly falling trees. Do you understand? What we call deforestation. And we are in the habit of falling trees without replacing them. Do you understand? So, and now this is also causing problem, desertification, and also some other environmental challenges. So now, what impact do you think this issue of deforestation will have on our peace? Do you think the falling down of trees without replacing them has anything to do with the stability or has anything to contribute to instability in other locations or in other communities at all? Because I know that if there is a drought, there is a desertification, there are bound to be movement of certain people. And as they move, there are consequences that follows it. Do you understand? So what are those impacts that we can see that are related to peace in terms of environmental impact concerning deforestation, concerning this fossil fuel consumption that we're talking about here?
Okay, thank you very much. Now, a sociologist said one crime leads to another crime. So it's a crime when we fall trees without control. Like we said before, every process, every institute, every organization have regulations on how and modalities to carry out its impact. So when we deforest, when we fall trees, and the exposure of the ultraviolet rays to the ground, to the soil is hard. Of course, the place will get drought. There will be hunger. The animals that we are supposed to preserve will have to migrate to somewhere else. And of course, we know that it has a negative impact on human living also. The release of oxygen from this forest, from this bush will be reduced. And human beings in a particular space with gaps for few oxygen, of course, polluted oxygen in an environment. And of course, it impacts the production of crops. It impacts the production, the survival of livestock. And now there is an effect and impact of urbanization globally. When people migrate for greener pastures, when people migrate for survival, like we see the lead campaign manifesto in America today, where the lead contestants are saying, talking about migration, impact of migration, crime, you know, suicide bombers coming into the system, criminals coming into the system, people with wrong and false motivation coming into the system, thereby, complicating issues, drug addicts coming into the system, teaching the children in a safe environment to do evil, defiling people of their norms. Migration sometimes could make people begin to, that's what we call acculturation, the ability of people to our culture, that is, learn from another culture. And there are people that are conservatives. They conserve their cultures. They want to be who they are. They want to sustain what they are. But the impact of migration now is that, come on, I'm a free person. This is my ideology. I influence an innocent child in a secret place, and the person becomes a new person. That impact alone can corrupt the whole system, because we don't know who one person can impact negatively the whole system. So we now see that migration, especially when it comes out of quest to survive, could bring crime, theft, increase theft, could increase druggery in the system, could increase cyber attacks in the system, could spy a system. Because even though in our states or in our nations in Africa, to some extent, we don't take social security very, very serious. There are persons that comes into your system just to spy you, learn the secrets of what makes you successful for free, and they go back and impact it in their society. Just like we have the technical issues between China and America. This is all how it began, okay? The technical development and medical development in India, where people had to come into other nations, learn the systems, how it works, and go back. Now, in the scientific cycle or in technological cycle, is a war, because everybody, of course, technology is transferable, but there are limits to technological transfers. There are things that you must hold to be lead, to take lead in particular sectors. But when there is migration, without control as a result of all these things, we begin to see that a whole lot of structures collapse. Sometimes the struggle for space, the struggle for jobs, like we saw in South Africa, where South Africans began to kill Nigerians for one reason or the other, which has to do with migration, of course, which has to do with competition for employment space, where Nigerians could do cheaper jobs above the South African citizens. And of course, every company wants to work with a cheaper labor. And people now say, we don't have jobs. You are giving jobs to strangers. You are giving jobs to foreigners. And at the end, there were crises where South Africans were killed and Nigerians were killed. So we see that this one thing has a way of impacting every other sector, of which deforestation is major. Thank you.
Doc, thank you very much for that wonderful response. And but I'm still worried, and I believe you are also worried as well. Now, if you look at it very well, in every average house, like what I'm talking about, an average person's home, do you understand? There is a generator.
Yes.
I don't know much about other African countries, but for Nigeria, I can vouch for it that every average Nigerian has a generator in his house. Do you understand? Now, the question is how ready Nigeria is to embrace this, greener energy we are talking about here, cleaner energy we are talking about here. Is Nigeria actually ready? And are we even getting ready for it? Because for us, when we see the heat, we consider it to be a normal thing where we have been exposed to heat. This is our nature. So it's just that seasons change. They don't understand that this thing are the impact of climate change. We are taking it to be natural, as in, we are in the desert now. What is the problem? But they don't know that this thing, the impact that we're talking about here, that are coming to us. The heat level has increased and doubled. I can tell you, if you go to the north, do you understand? People die of heat. Do you understand? Heat. And still, we are ignorant. We don't know that it's because of the impact of climate change. And we have generators everywhere around us, in our office, workplaces, at home. Some have even at home, some have in the office. Do you understand? So you can see the impact we are talking about here. Now, the question is, how ready? Because if we are ready, we're supposed to be putting policies in place to reduce the importation of generators and importation of other, some or even vehicles now that we have. We should be thinking of how we can begin to bring electric vehicles or think of bringing technologies that will produce vehicles that are not emitting some of these things, or even bikes. So can you share with us if there's any form of readiness at all on the part of Nigerians and Nigerian government?
Yes. I think everything has to do with legislation. If there are legislations that is put down to ensure that the importation of generators are controlled, the importation of carbon emitting sources of energy is controlled, I think that it will bring it down to the lowest minimum. But on the other hand, I think, like we are doing today, people have to move motions. In states, people pass bills, people push for bills, people sponsor bills. So I think bills like this needs to be pushed because the government depends on people to function. And I know that Nigerian technologies are the best globally. I stand to be corrected. I know that globally Nigeria has best hands in all sectors. So, but the issue is the interaction between and how we follow our quests. For example, there are things we want to achieve, but we don't know how to. We are all complaining. We have ideas, but cannot push it through the right sources. So we have the State House of Assemblies, we have the Federal House of Representatives and the Senate. Bills like this can be pushed through institutes or through, concerned groups that we need a green environment. Like Norway, it's something the government is driving. It is not people on the grassroots that are calling for it. It's a goal, it's a vision. And we know that there's a vision 2030 for African nation, of course, to be green. And of course, we know that the Nigerian government is part of it, that by 2030, Nigeria should be also green. The world should be green by 2030. So it's a move. But one thing I know happening in the rural areas from my own area is that there are now installation of solar panels, solar systems across communities, which serves as both street lights, which serves as power pumps, which serves as energy to water pump projects in communities by government, of course, representatives like the House of Assembly members, the Federal House members, senators, and of course, if these guys are doing this, the government is doing something. So it's a gradual process. We'll get there, even though we Nigerians need also to adjust in our attitudes because a lot of these projects have been vandalized. In fact, somebody made a statement, he said, now who put a mine collector? I don't know where he's coming from, but he said, now who put a collector? So because the same person that installed it would come to say, we want to correct something, and it's no more there. It's very unfortunate. We are not saying that the same government collected them, but we are saying that the environment, the people needs to be educated on the need of those very important projects. So the government is pushing, the government is doing its best. The importation and accessibility of these products is on the increase, and I feel that importation duties on such things needs to come very low so that people could have access to this for private use. Because if someone should cook, we know the amount of energy it takes to power boilers, electric boilers. If they are solar powered boilers, we know the amount of energy it takes. So it's not something that is so affordable for everybody. So the government needs to also bring down tariff or import duties on this so that people could access them. If they do it, of course, it's part of government's responsibility. We discover that speedily their goals and visions will come to pass. So the government is doing its best, and we have presence of more solar facilities from government officials, and we expect more. We expect more work to be done.
Yes, exactly. We're expecting more to be done, most especially on the side of government in terms of registration. And but one thing we have a challenge with our government here is that we may have good policies, but the problem is the implementation. Do you understand? That's another challenge that we always have. We do have quality policies, but implementing them is always a challenge. And most of the times, because of other, just like we talk about the attitude of bribe, corruption here and there, has been affecting some of the implementation of some of the policies that we had in the past. And even if now, if you want to, and it's possible that there may be a registration that says the imposition of generator should reduce, but maybe some people are there collecting money and then just closing eyes to allow it to come in and pass. Are you the point now? Because the truth
Right.
of the matter is that even if you want to, like, okay, implement such policies now, look at the reality. Where is the electricity? Do we have even the one that government is generating from this hydroelectric power generation station that we have? How many government is generating? How much are we receiving from it? Are you the point now? And we are paying so much for it. Do you understand? And compared to the fact that people are poor in this country, how many people have so much to pay for electricity? Do you understand?
Right.
How many people have so much to pay for cooking gas? Do you understand? The cooking gas is very, very expensive. I used to buy as of 2020, okay, as of 2020, let me say it. As of 2020, I used to buy 12 kg around 3,500 of
Right.
cooking gas. But now 12 kg it has been moving and coming, and sometimes 15,000, sometimes 12,000. Also, the last time I bought 12,500. Do you understand?
Right.
So you can imagine how expensive it is. So how can the common people, or how can the people that are in the rural areas afford this kind of a thing? Do you understand? So that's why it is government. I will not say government is not doing anything. Government is doing, but it's just that it's not enough, and sometimes they lack political will to do certain things, take certain action, proactive action steps to make sure that we solve some of the problem once and for all. Do you understand? So, in as much as we have say government is doing, much is still needed on the side of government in terms of administration, in terms of implementation of those policies and programs of government. And then the attitude of the people, just as you have said, we have, if we must cut down the trees, fine, because we have other things that we do with trees, all right, like construction, like buildings, like roofing, and all of those things, and other stuff like furniture activities we have, they have to do with wood. If we must for trees, we must make effort. People must be educated to make effort to replant. Do you understand? Plant trees. Once you fail to plant, and so I think by so doing, then we'll be able to deal with these issues. Now, but and Doc, before we call it a day, let me ask, what impact do you think climate change have on the health of the people? I think you mentioned something like that, but I want you to just lay emphasis on what I know health impacts we are going to see from climate change, or the impacts of global warming, or the emission of greenhouse gases that we have been talking about, the impact on the lives and the health of the people. I just want you to lay more emphasis on that so that people can hear and know the dangers that are involved. When you are doing this, you cook and enjoy, but at the end of the day, know that this is the impact that you are going to go and pay serious bills in the hospital to treat yourself. I get a point on. So just let's get more points to emphasize the impact of all of these climate issues on health.
Okay. Now, the impact of climate change on health, like we've mentioned, includes cancers. Some of the cancers we see in society today as a result of terrible ultraviolet rays coming from the
And I
sun.
must tell you, cancers are everywhere. Doc, cancers are everywhere. When you hear the rate at which people complain of cancer, you'll be wondering. In those days, when we were coming up, we know here before you hear that somebody have a cancer, you'll be wondering. It
There's
was
a,
very rare for you to hear that somebody have cancer. But nowadays, just everywhere, cancer of this, cancer of that, cancer of this, is too rampant.
Right, right, and that is very, 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 very terrible, because this impacts the cells of the body, and once it's impacted, it's a problem. So it's a challenge which we must take very, very seriously. So the impact of climate change is something that we cannot overemphasize. A whole lot of things, choleras. For example, we have an outbreak of cholera in Nigeria today. In fact, one of our pastor friends was communicating us. He said he took his children to the hospital as a result of cholera. Because we say one thing leads to another thing. Okay? For example, deforestation. People living in the upper lands who make their plants, their crops with chemicals, synthetic fertilizers and all those things. And there are no trees, you know, to wage the leaching of these chemicals to the water lines. You now see that because the forests are not there, the trees are not there, when the rain comes, it leaches, it washes all the fertilizers, it washes all the chemicals from one particular farm or one particular community into a stream, poisons the stream, and flows down to another community. Innocent people will come, take from the water, drink, you hear deaths in the community. People, the fishes that inhabit the waters will die. So we see that all these things are impacting us in one way or the other. We've talked about the cancer, we've talked about the cholera, we've talked about the impact in the what do you call it, the aquatic life cycle, where these fishes die. When the fishes die, it has impacted us. There will be hunger in the land, and some of them that you will be fishing are already poisoned. They are sick. They are not good for. They are not edible anymore. But we don't have choice. We get them, bring them to the market, and we, you know, migrate poisons from one point to another point. So there are a whole lot of issues that concerns this. The fact remains that we must understand, for example, some pests, which are supposed to be in the forest also, will have to migrate to our houses. Something happened in my compound in the village where somebody did a thorough cleanup and got 13 snakes of different colors under his rug. 13, not 3, 13 living with him for years. He did not know. That was because the natural habitat for this has been impacted, and they need a safe place to stay. So we see that there are a lot of issues we need to sort through what we're talking about. So we need everybody to understand that our life is not just in the hand of God, but a direct impact of what you and I do every day with our environment. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you very much, Doc. Let me take a question from the comment section. Somebody commented here. He's asking a question. That is a question from Alabi Salihu. He is asking, how can we link global warming to the farmers' herders crisis in Nigeria? That's a question Salihu is asking. How can we link global warming to the herders farmers crisis in Nigeria?
Okay. Now, the correlation between the herders and farmers with regards to global warming. Now, there are seasons when the herders would need to come down south, using Nigeria geography as an example. Now, in the Sahel regions, of course, during the rainy season, we have a different I'm trying to get the word. We have vegetation, okay? We have different vegetations across Nigeria, the Sahel regions, the mangrove regions, okay? Now, in the south, we discover that during the rainy seasons, these grasses get green as a result of the rains. Now, in the north, it's not also like that. Because of the competition for survival, the herders will need to come down south to feed their cattle, it is survival. It is the impact of global warming. If the system was, sound, the rate at which the heat at the north, which dehydrates the systems, which dehydrates the vegetations, will be slower. And you have at least something these cattle can survive with. But because the environment is depleted, the ecosystem is depleted, it is a must that they'll have to come down and feed these cattle. Now the issue is that the farmers have just planted their crops, hoping for harvest after 3 months, 4 months or so. But on the other hand, the herders migrate from the north down to feed their cattle. And of course, these cattle do not know the difference between cassava, corn, and other grasses. And of course, the herders themselves, to some extent, as a result of goal getting, target getting, they need to make sure that these cattle get to a particular size before the rain stops, before they turn north again, or before they begin to dispose their animals. Remember that the cattle business is time targeted. So we need to do everything possible to ensure that they need to do everything possible to ensure that these cattle, in the space of 3 months, get big as to make profit, target profit and profit. So on that note, they come down, consume the crops of the farmers, and as a result of that, there is conflict. Because people, in fact, this year I discovered how painful it is to be a farmer. I thought farming is all about going to the farm, making ridges and planting. I never knew that it was capital intensive. There are farmers who would want to plant rice, for example. The people that will help them plant the rice in the last, just a portion, they tell you 10,000 naira. If you won't pay, you leave. And of course, you can't do it alone, as to meet up target also. So people pay as much as 200,000 naira just to make ridges, another 200,000 to plant, maybe 100,000 to weed, because you can't do it alone if it is a large scale farm. At the end of the day, somebody invests 10 million, 5 million, expecting that in 6 months' time, he'll be harvesting and heading for the farm, for the market. And suddenly he wakes up in the morning, like we saw in the southeast, in the south-south, people wake up in the morning to discover that their crops have been eaten up. Some died, some fainted. Youths carried arms to wage war against the cattle rearers, and at the end of the day, there were mortalities in both sides. There is unrest in the society, and at the end of the day, the system isn't peaceful. So these are impacts that global warming could bring in the interrelationship between the herders and the cattle rearers. It is a very sensitive one, especially in Nigeria. And government has been doing its best to negotiate. But the truth of the matter is that people are beginning to wonder, who are the sponsors of these herders in the South? Because we know that through interaction, whenever the community decides to go into their farms to monitor the activities of the herders, the same moment they disappear. So it has been proven that community leaders have a hand in the invitation of herders, because no herder comes into a community without permission of the community. There are principles that guide herders in what they do. Herders interact with community leaders, and they are given portions and routes they should go through. But for greed, selfishness, lack of empathy on people lead, some people would not stand on the herding routes or the cattle routes, but say, give me 10,000 naira, give me 100,000 naira, give me 1 million naira. If I pay for a service, I have the right to access the commodity. So if a king, a youth leader, a woman leader, or group of leaders in community collects money from herders, then You want them to just pass, it doesn't work. So it has been proven that we have a compromised system. Of course, global warming, climate change has brought the natural trigger for these actions. So we have a lot to do. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Doc, for that explicit answer, because this is a very sensitive issue. When we were growing up, the herders used to come to our area as well. They will migrate and come. Sometimes we harvest our rice. They will come and enter all those our swamp areas and eat the grasses. And sometimes we will even be moving with them as young children. Do you understand? Move with them, go far distances. Do you understand? And then we also do what we call kill with them. Do you understand? We just follow them and then be pushing cows around. Do you understand? Just was fun. But suddenly, it has changed. The situation just turned into a different case. When we look at them, we see them as a potential enemies. Do you understand? And then when they look at us also, they feel that we're potential enemies. There's no, I don't even know where that thing come from again. Do you understand? But in those days, they pass and go and then eat in our, after we harvest, they enter, eat some of the things that are there and go their own way. Do you understand? But nowadays, they come when the farming season is on. But in those days, they used to come when we are about to harvest or harvest things, we are harvesting or are done harvesting. They'll come and stay that period until, down south, even during dry season, you see the grasses are still looking fresh and all of that. So they will come and then eat at that period. When the rainy season is coming back, they return back to the north. Do you understand? Because at that time, the grasses there also begin to grow up. And then when dry season is coming, they begin to migrate down south. Do you understand? And that's how it was operating. But nowadays, you see, during rainy season, they are there. During farming period, they are there. So it's as if there's something different that we are looking at. It's no longer the way it used to be. And then it's true that this thing can be triggered as a result of global warming system we're talking about. Because in the north, sometimes before you see rain, like I was in Jigawa before we moved down to Abuja, if you can remember, June, there's no rain in Jigawa yet. You understand? You start seeing rain maybe late June or July, August, September rain cut. Do you understand? So what do you expect these guys should do from that January to May, June? What do you expect them to do? They have no choice. They have to feed their animals. They have to give the animals water and all of those things. So it becomes challenging. Do you understand? But when we talk about the issue of ranching, people still play over it. Do you understand? Government still playing policies over the issue of ranching. Do you understand? But we need to put concerted effort to make this happen so that we can reduce some of the conflict that we're having around. But this thing can probably be caused by these global warming activities that we're talking about here. Do you understand? So I thank you so much for that wonderful response. And but as a word of advice to Nigeria concerning this issue of global warming, emission of greenhouse gases and everything, and the impact of all of it that we have discussed here, what kind of advice are you going to give on the government in Africa, and then the people generally, how they should conduct themselves to make sure that we enjoy what God has blessed us with, and at the same time, we know we're talking about sustainable development as well as sustainable peace. And then why we are enjoying development, we're also enjoying the peace that God has blessed us with.
Okay, thank you very much. I encourage the African government to adopt sustainable systems that ensures the reduction of carbon emission to the environment. I encourage them to adopt alternative energy systems which we refer to as greener energy, as this is core to economic, social, health, environmental sectors in society. One sector in society impacts the other, but energy is the core of everything. Without energy, we cannot run our schools, we cannot run our engines, we cannot run our day-to-day life. So my word of advice is that we switch into greener energy, as this will keep our environment safe. If our environment is safe, the health sector would not be having a lot of challenges. If our environment is safe, our economy will fly. If we have access to renewable energy, remember that this can function, can run 24 hours without noise. They can run 24 hours without obstructions, except on rare basis, therefore increasing the economy of the nation ×3 in a very short period of time. So greener energy is the way to go. Nations have adopted it. They are flying high, and they are being the envy of the globe. So we should switch in on time. What matters now is when to switch in. We shouldn't switch in late. We should switch in on time, ensure that by 2030, the goal of making Nigeria, the goal of making Africa green is achieved. And to everybody in the society, I want us to adopt these systems. Let us go for solar-powered televisions, solar-powered items. Let us go for solar systems. Let us, adopt. I know it's a gradual thing. Then to community leaders, we can run this as projects. Provide these facilities, distribute them to the environment, distribute them to the people in the community, and gradually, through systematic means, collect the funds for this, because it will help us to be safer. If there are electricity everywhere, crime will reduce. Automatically, wherever there are stable street lights, people will not be smoking in the night. People will not be raping people in such areas. Naturally, crime would be reduced to the lowest minimum. Nightlife will come again. People can, catch some fun, spend their monies as they want to spend in the night or whenever, and at the end of the day, at a lower cost. In my area, people buy cool beer, cool drinks, and pay for the chilling. If malt is 350 naira, people say it's 500 naira because it is chilled. If you don't want chilled one, it is 350 naira. So we can see its impact around all of us. So I encourage us to go greener, and we'll build a greater nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doc. And before we go, let me take a comment from Simeon Abrams, Eke. He said the Nigerian people are ready, but the Nigerian government is not ready. The economy downtown and the government not coming out with great ideas to turn around the economy is a serious issue. Everything here is mostly done by the private individual. And registration is not the only aspect as advocacy that can be done. So, Simeon, we thank you very much for your contribution and making your voice to be heard. We appreciate those of you that have joined to be part of this program. You made the program colorful, and we know that we're not wasting our time, because in one way or the other, you have learned something, and we are going to implicate what we learn here in our society and in our personal lives. Doc, it's we are grateful. We are grateful that you are taking your time to be part of today's program, and the sacrifice you are making to make the Institute voice to be heard as well. We appreciate you for being a true ambassador of the Institute. Thank you so much for your sacrifice, and thank you for your time as well.
Thank you. God bless.
All right, thank you, sir. So once again, the program is brought to you by the Institute of Global Peace and Conflict Management. Institute of Global Peace and Conflict Management is a professional institution, and we have series of activities, peace clinic. We have free education training as well. You can also take part of that. And then we have our inductions coming up for those of you that want to be members of the Institute and contribute to make our society and our globe better. You can take steps to become part of the Institute as well. And by so doing, you can visit our website, www.igpcn.com.ng, to reach out to us or know what we are doing. or you can reach us on 08077987757 to also know what is going on. And so you can chat us on WhatsApp as well. We can respond. And you can also follow us on our Facebook page, on our Instagram page, on our Twitter, on our YouTube, on our what do you call it, TikTok, and on LinkedIn. We are on all of these social media handles. You can follow us, and then you know what is happening in the institute. By and large, thank you and have a lovely weekend. See you as we bring another edition of the Peace Clinic. Thank you very much. My name once again is Ambassador Tahuli Joshua, the Registrar of the Institute of Global Peace and Conflict Management. Bye-bye from this end, Doc. See you next time.
Thank you.